Before I start doing a video, I thought I'd just show you what the south of England looks like in February. Today is the 24th of February and it's the first decent day we've had. It feels almost spring-like. But as you can see, the trees don't have their leaves yet. My evergreens like the magnolia have their leaves, but all the oak trees, zelkovas and maples are still bare, but they still look nice. But when we see the blue skies and the sunshine, it lifts your soul and it makes you feel happy. So showing you a bit of this before we start the video will put us in a good mood. So I will now go into the back greenhouse and start doing some work. I'm now going to show you how we refine our group plantings and forest plantings. So I've got three little projects which I will put in one video. These, as you know, are the famous Christmas trees. If you recall, before the pandemic, I did a video where I showed how to make bonsai from Christmas trees. And I still remember everyone laughed at me. I won't tell you the number of complaints I had, people saying that you can't make a bonsai out of Christmas trees. And yet, soon after I made that video, almost every person on this planet has copied me and started making bonsai from Christmas trees. So that is what I was able to achieve. And this is the humble Christmas tree. We call it the Christmas tree because in the UK at Christmas time, they're sold a lot and sold as small Christmas trees and table decorations. The botanical name is the Picea glauca albertiana or Alberta Spruce or whatever. There are many little variants of this, but basically it is this type of spruce. So this forest was made from this type of tree. So you can see normally it has the habit of growing like this, very bushy, but they can be made to look like trees. This one was made about 3 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, and already it has become very, very overgrown. Looking at it from a distance, you may think it looks all right, but to my mind, it can be improved. Whenever you do bonsai, never accept the status quo. There is always room for improvement. If you feel that there's no room for improvement, then you won't make much progress in bonsai. If you come close, I will show you what I mean. All these branches have merged into one another and it's beginning to look like a bush. Beginning to look like a bush. They don't look like individual trees. The secret of making a shrub or a bush look like a tree is to show the separation of branches and to make the branches hang downwards. So in the space of 3 years, such a lot of growth has occurred, and this is the time when we need to refine it. So let's take this one for instance, starting from the left-hand side. We will also need to do some wiring. Make sure that the branches are arranged with their pads hanging this way and relatively flat. This branch has been wired, so it's not too bad, but not all the branches have been wired. Also, with the forest group, there's no need for low growing branches. We need to show the trunk. The secret of making a shrub look like a tree is always to show the trunk. So here we are showing the trunk on this one. I will need to do some wiring, but let's clean the tree up first. So if you look carefully at this, again, if you're fairly new to all this, don't get carried away and remove too much. Just remove enough to make it look nice. I know it's always tempting to overdo anything. I need to wire that one. This one will have to be wired down. This is the sort of effect I want to achieve. And again, leaving space between branches means that I have to take out some of the branches or little twigs that are growing in between and clouding the space between the branches. we need some back branches too, so bear that in mind. And then this at the top is much too dense. I know you need to have a mature crown, but if it's like a big blob, it doesn't quite look the part. I want to show the trunk even up at the top. Ideally, I should be wiring each pair of branches as I go along, but I'm spacing it and I get a feel for what I'm doing. So let me carry on doing this and then I will show you how I wire them. Okay, so now I'm going to wire some of it. So already you can see how much I've taken off. Just from one of these small trees I've taken off that much. Now to start wiring. And for this purpose, I think 2 mil is probably right, 2 or 2.5. As I always like to remind you, one of the most popular or commonly used sizes of wire for bonsai is 2 mil. The Christmas trees, or these Pisceas, they're very nice for bonsai, but they have this bad habit of sprouting upwards. You can't keep the branches on a horizontal plane for too long. They have this natural habit of springing upwards. Then these have to be wired. You see the difference? This is springing up like that, but as soon as you start bringing it down, it begins to look like a proper tree. So that is the effect we want. So again, I'm looking for a pair of branches to wire together. You will notice that a lot of these branches are arranged in threes, threesome. So what you do, don't throw your hands up in panic and say, oh, how can I wire 3 branches using the 2-branch principle? Yes, you can. You wire the first pair and then use a branch that you've already wired and then go on to the next one by wiring that branch again. Let me show you exactly what I mean. So it might seem a tedious job, but if you want anything to look nice, you have to take that effort and trouble. So making the branches hang down. So that one at the back, let me see, I need it. Yes, I think I need it. Back branches, some people are lazy and say, oh, no one can see the back. But the back plays a role in that the back provides the backdrop. Without the back branch, you don't get the perspective. It throws the branches in the front into proper relief. So back branches have a role to play in any composition. So again, I'm doing these two together. So as you can imagine, just to tidy this group up can take a lot of time. When you think that just to rewire one branch has already taken me quite a bit of time. But as we say, if you don't do it, you don't get good results. See again, anything sprouting up, I take off. Just going to show you just the effect of it. Can you see how that tree is beginning to look like a tree and not just an ordinary shrub? Now this one is sticking up, so I've got to wire this and this together. Always clear the stems like this so that you don't get these little hairy bits hanging around. So I need this branch and I need this branch. Let me wire those two together. So I'm switching between 2 mil and 1.5 mil. The Pisceas can grow quite rapidly, so you need to make sure you remove the wires if you don't want them to mark. I know that sometimes I like to leave the wire on certain conifers, especially pines and junipers, but that's when I want that gnarled effect on a single trunk. But usually for branches, I don't do that. So although I've wired that down, can you see there's such a lot of little twiglets hanging down? So anything hanging down I will remove because I want it to be flat, the pads to be flat. Okay, so this one, the third one, is out on a limb, as it were, out on its own. So I will simply link it to a branch that I've already wired. So this branch has been wired. Let me wire it again. So that is simply providing an anchor for the unwired branch. So where you get a situation that involves 3 branches, you can still do that by wiring a branch you've already done and then taking the wire to that one. You see, I'm working on a turntable, and this turntable helps me rotate it easily. You see how I'm bringing the branches down, and then I can manipulate it so that the view is correct. Anything hanging down I take off, anything sprouting upward take off. By pruning like this you will get more bud back, so you'll get more density. So you can see how the tree is beginning to look like a tree by thinning it out. So there's some more to go. So these have to be wired as well. This is already an established group, and I nearly sold it the other day, but I wanted to keep it for this demonstration. The trouble is, when people see the projects I do, they always ask to buy the ones that I've worked on, but I like to keep them to show the progress of the before and after. But you got to pardon me, it's not always possible. We get people who insist on buying trees that we've already produced. People who have been doing bonsai for a long time will certainly tell you that wiring may seem to be a chore meaning a tedious operation. But if you're genuinely interested in the hobby, the wiring is one of the most satisfying exercises or processes. It gives you time to think, and you can see the result straight away. Because at the end of a bit of wiring, you can see how it has improved the look of the tree. You see how I've transformed a round bushy crown into something which is much more refined. I've still got to wire the back one, mind you. So I'm going to find, I think this is again a 3 branch situation. And of course, with all these groups, there's a mixture of small trees and big trees. That's what makes it interesting. It's very seldom that you can produce a group which is interesting by having just the same size trees. Simply by having different size trees adds variety and it makes it more natural. I know that commercial plantations, forest plantations where people grow the trees for timber, they're all the same age and same size. But if you go to a natural forest where trees have been growing naturally without the aid of man, they tend to have different sizes. You know, the seedlings come up and the parent trees continue to live on. So what we're trying to do here is reproduce what you would see hopefully in nature, where there are trees of different ages. A number of people have always asked me, ever since I've been doing bonsai for more than 40, 50, 60 years, have you ever tried making a group with a mixed species? That means, supposing if you have a beech group, can you introduce oak trees in it or hornbeams in it? I did try, but for some reason, because of the scale of the composition, oak leaves are bigger than beech leaves and different in shape from hornbeam leaves. Somehow they never seem to work properly. So the answer is, I have tried, but it doesn't seem to work. So you can see what I've done. If you come looking at this, see how I've changed this tree. And that's the amount I've taken off. I reckon I've taken off half the foliage. Look at that. I've taken off half the foliage. This is what I've taken off from this much from here, just to get that effect. That effect. Now these here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 trees, 5 trees. This for some reason has got 6 trees in the group. But does it look bad? Does it look unnatural? You know, people always argue you've got to have odd number trees, but this has got even number trees, 6. But it doesn't detract from the beauty of the tree. This is 6 group forest. Okay, so I'm going to wire these as well. I'll wire this one to show you what this one should look like, and then I will do this in my own time and show you again. Suffice it to say that this is much too crowded. I need to look at that one. So I'm going to just put a few bits of wire on this to improve this. So let me begin. With most conifers, it's very important to take the tips out. By taking the tips out, you prevent it extending longer and longer, and you will get more bud back. If you didn't do that, they will get a bit unkempt and all the growth will go towards the end. But you've got to keep this part fairly free. The branches which are growing towards the trunk, we try to keep them free. Okay, we'll see now. These two look all right. Okay, let's wire these two first. Again, I've got to use different gauges of wire. Now going to 2.5 millimeter wire, because these branches of the big tree are more mature, harder to bend. So let's wire this up. And since it's only the 3rd week in February, growth hasn't started yet, but come April and May, when spring is really on its way, this will green up no end. So it's still coming through the winter. And in winter, all these conifers suffer what we call the frost blush, where the frost turns the foliage brown. See, these small secondary branches I can also wire. Don't be lazy. All these little twigs have to be wired. The more you wire, the more detail you get. So can you imagine if you had a pad with a lot of these secondary branches, it would take ages to wire, but it's worth the effort. I want to arrange it flat. If I didn't arrange it flat, it springs up. See, that's the effect I want to get. That's the effect I want to get. Now I've got these two branches here. I got to ask myself, do I need it? Maybe I will keep that one. I've got to stand back and see the effect. Let me wire the other ones first, because I may eliminate that later on. Now this one, can you see how this one has grown? In just the space of 3 years, this branch has become so long, it's springing upwards, shooting up. You don't want that effect. But if I wire it down, let's see what effect I'll get. I may get that effect. Let me see how it would look. I don't want to cut it off without trying. So that is a typical case in point where we have neglected it a bit, but we will return to it. Okay, so I'm going to wire these two. So I'm going to use fairly thick wire for that. You notice that I always take the wire from the rear, from the back. I don't take it from the front. Where I can, I won't take it from the front. Oh, I forgot to see that one. Can you see there's a back branch here? Now, I don't think I need it because there are a lot of trees there. So by taking this down, I don't need this branch. So I'm going to eliminate this branch. So that's fine. So in that situation, because I didn't want to obscure that view, I've taken that off. But normally you have to bear in mind that the back branches do play a useful role. Okay, so let's wire those two. From the back so that the front is clear. Sometimes old twigs do die, but as long as the branch is alive, that's fine. So that's 2.5 mil wire. My fingers can't handle it, so I have to use the gin pliers. You can see how useful the gin pliers is. So we don't want the branches overhanging the other one, so we will manipulate it so that it doesn't overhang. And then these pads I'm going to wire to arrange them flat. That one also I might wire. So sometimes you can manipulate it. This one I want to just, I'll show you what I'm going to do with this. This normally you would use as a pad, but I might use it as a secondary branch. So that one, I'm going to do that, which was part of the main branch, which normally should be used for the pad, but I'm not using it for the pad. I'm going to take that and create a secondary branch. So that one I'm going to take down like this and make it appear like that. So it adds more interest, like so. To fill that gap, as it were, and then these will be refined and wired flat. So I can do that. Now that one has not been wired, so that's a situation where I have 3 branches. So the 3 branch I will wire to an existing non-wired branch to create the 2 branch principle. So this one I will wire to the thick branch. And then take it round here. So already I can see that these 2 branches don't seem to be necessary. I haven't removed it yet, but I will wait. So these 2 can be wired. Next time, let me see, do I need that back branch? Maybe not, because if I take it down, this one is going to hide this tree. So, although that was a back branch, I don't think somehow I will need that. So I'm going to eliminate this one. This one is coming off. So you just got to place it in position and see whether it is relevant or not. It is no longer relevant. So I can use these 2 branches like that. So I'm more or less making another group. The way I'm analyzing the tree, it's almost like doing a completely new tree. This is how trees evolve, or these bonsai compositions evolve. You've all got to return to it and reassess it. What was right at the time you created it has moved on. So you've got to reassess the situation. Again, to reinforce the learning process, by eliminating some of these things, you are applying the less is more principle. Sometimes too much of a good thing doesn't work. So this tree, can you see how sparse it is compared to a normal pisceal which grows like that? This is really sparse. You're just isolating and showing the branches separately to reveal the beauty of the trunk. I think a lot of you like to hear the thought process. So this is the thought process. This is what I'm thinking, you know. How do I enhance the beauty? Okay, so this is again, I've got 3 branches there, so I've got to take my time to arrange all the 3 branches so that it looks effective. I'll decide what to use, 2 mil or 2.5, maybe 2 mil. 2 mil. Again, taking the wire from the back rather than from the front, so I don't clutter the front. In case you are wondering why I keep assuming that you all know which is the front or the back, this group was made long ago and it was created with this as the front. And the reason for why this is the front is because you can see all the trunks. If you turn it to the back, some people may like it, but you don't see the trunks. So this is what we call the back of the tree. The front is where we have a view of the trunks, and that is the principal tree, the main tree. So not just individual bonsai, but even forest groups have a front and a back. There's an odd branch at the back. I've got to deal with that. We'll come to that in a minute. That one's got to be wired, that one's got to be wired. So although that's on its own, I'm going to wire this one again. So 3 branch situation, I'm going to deal with wiring it over again. So I'm going to wire the back one by linking this one. Don't be afraid to put a double coil of wire sometimes on a branch or a trunk, because very often a double strand of wire is more effective than a single piece of wire. You've got to judge. Spent a lot of video time, and I've only got to the second tree so far. I haven't looked at those 4, so I will have to cheat a bit and complete this tree and then show you how I will do the other ones. Now these bits of wire have proved to be not very effective because the top has become more vigorous than I had envisaged, and it has not done any useful work. So I'm going to take that thin wire off, and I'm going to wire it again. Mind you, it's done some work, it's created the crown, but it is no longer strong enough. Let me show you, if you bring the camera close, you see we took the top out. You see that's quite a brutal cut there, and we took a side branch up to make the apex. So that's what it looks like. If you don't take the growth point out, the tree will keep growing taller and taller, and it will reach the sky. So we've got to wire these 2, so let me unwire all the old bits of wire. Now I'm going to show you how to deal with the crown. I didn't wire the top 3 branches, and I know that simply by trimming I will get the effect I want. At the moment, if you look at this crown, it is too bulky, too bulging. I need to make it more of a conical shape. So simply by pruning the ends, I think I can get that effect. It's like literally going to your hairdresser. No more than that. So if you imagine a line like that, imaginary triangle, you see how I've changed it already, just by trimming. Many people think that you can't trim piceas, but you can trim piceas. It'll do it good. They are what we call top dominant trees. That means they tend to send all the energy to the top of the tree. So you got to deal with the top. If you don't deal with the top, it will become bushy. You see how bushy that is? Very, very bushy. It's almost like a bird's nest at the top. All that. So while it's growing, you've got to deal with it. And again, because we're looking at it from here, you see I've changed it already. See that top has become more triangular, less bulky. So that's the effect I've got, and I didn't wire those 3 branches at the top. So that is that tree finished. I've now finished 2 trees. I'll bring a piece of paper on my plastic bag and show you just those trees, what they look like. So this is what I've achieved. Just those 2 trees, like so. I've tried to blank out the back because the back trees, those 4 at the back, have not been dealt with so far. But I'm going to deal with it. Now, before I complete this tree, you see I decided not to take this off yet. But I think somehow it has a role to play. I will keep it because it may look like a taller tree if I kept it. So I'm just going to link it to that back branch, and because that back branch is going that way, I'm going to cut it off and just leave a little stub as the anchor for the tree, anchor for the branch I mean. So I'm going to anchor that one there, so you don't see it at all, and I'm going to wire this one down. I think it gives it another dimension. It makes it look a taller tree. I've kept that now. Okay, I've now dealt with 2 trees, and that's taken over half an hour. Now these trees are going to take another 45 minutes. I'm not going to show you all the video time because it's going to take far too long. But I'm just going to do some rough pruning because I know what I'm going to do. See all those branches at the back? Can you see all this? How that has grown? I don't think I need this. I can't see the trees. And I don't need them for gyms, so I'm taking them off. I'm taking that off. Even this one, I don't need that one. I don't need all these other ones. It's too close. So that can be taken off. Working from the back. See again, top heavy, top dominant. So I'm going to clean this. So again, looking at this tree, can you see how much growth there is here? I'm going to take some of that off because I want to show the trunk. Again, you see these low branches, I don't want them because I want to show the trunk. So we can now see the trunk. Although I'm looking at it from the back, I know that I can also see it when I turn the tree around to look at it from the front. And this is just the initial pruning. I'm going to have to wire it afterwards, which unfortunately I'm going to not show you because I've already taken about more than 35 minutes of video time. I'm going to have to thin some of these some more and make them look more like individual trees. So I've thinned out a lot, thinned out a great deal. So I should be able to see these trees individually. And that big blob I've got to thin in the same way I did that top. So I'm going to wire those 4 trees. I will show you this later on, and when it's all done, I will show you the complete tree, complete forest group. So this is the next day, because I didn't have time to work in the dark last night, so I stopped doing it at about 6 o'clock. So I'll show you where we got to. So this has all been trimmed, and if I can just show you, we were about to put it on the compost heap, but look at all that, look at all that. I reckon we took out 60% of the foliage from the entire group. So that is the amount we took off. If you compare it with the before picture and the after picture, you realize how much I have thinned out. So this is where people sometimes are afraid to thin the tree, and they don't manage to create that lovely sparse, elegant looking effect. But having said that, I've also got to warn people not to be over enthusiastic, because sometimes if you're too eager and too keen, you can scalp the tree completely and end up with nothing. One little thing I would point out is here, these branches here, in case you think it's coming from the trunk, it's not. This particular tree had no branches there. So this is in fact like a twin trunk tree. If you look carefully here, this little tree is double trunk. So I took the thin trunk up there and then used it to make branches from that. So if you don't have branches where you really need it, you can do it by doing a little bit of cheating, as it were. But in a distance, it looks perfectly all right. It looks as if it's part of the same tree. You can carry on thinning a little bit. The more you look, the more you can find some faults or room for improvement. I don't like to refer to them as faults, because they're not always faults. So that top, I could have thinned more, but I'll leave it like that. So now let me explain to you the aesthetics. If you look from the back, I was looking at it on a screenshot that I took last night, and it is a classic case of a painting. Now, in painting, you're taught that if you put small things in the back or in the distance, it looks as if it's receding. That means the thing is drawing your eye to the back. So you're looking at the depth. So that's why we usually put small trees at the back to give that sense of distance. So this is a clear case of using small trees at the back to give that distant look. And I'm sure now that I've pointed it out to you, if you look at it like that, this is an exact example of where you can create perspective and distance by having small trees in the rear and going like that. This tree, of course, balances that. And again, if I can point out that it has 6 trees, an even number, are you concerned? Does it detract from the beauty of this group? Not in the least. So don't worry too much about these rules about odd and even. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter one bit. People may laugh at me, but there you are. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Although this is just an exercise in refining or pruning, you can still learn a lot from it, because you're almost creating from scratch. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed this one.